Meeting shall come to order at 6:06. Special meeting of council on July 23rd, 2014.
This is a, we're going to talk about whether that failing to be signed before we have to go here.
Okay.
Issues on our table, ready for first reading, and tell you that.
Will the clerk please call the roll tonight?
Adams. Jones. Safrati. Jackson.
Excused.
Explain that again if you want.
Brownlee.
Here.
Turjansky. Agee. Albers.
Here. Can I have a motion to suspend the regular council meeting agenda and proceed with only the legislation tonight? Second? Second. Call the roll, please.
Adams. Jones.
Yes.
Safrati.
Yes.
Jackson. I'm sorry. Brownlee.
Present.
Turjansky.
Yes.
Agee.
Yes. Okay, first thing on the agenda is, I believe we're going to have to do some, take it out.
Madam Chair, I need a motion
Please.
to take,
36.
oh, there it is, 2014-36 out of committee and have it placed on the agenda.
Okay. Is there a second?
Adams.
Madam Chair, I have a comment, please.
I think we were just in the process of calling the roll.
It's because
Can
you
you
never
wait
asked for
1
discussion
moment?
on motion.
We're taking something out of committee. Is that something you want
This
me
is a
to
motion, just like
discuss?
any other motion.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Brownlee. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is a, as you're probably aware, it's a change to kind of the fee structure and how the paperwork will be handled within the building department concerning rental registration. There was some confusion as to how the fees are actually being adjusted. what
Mr.
fees
Brownlee,
are still there.
this is just to bring it out of committee. It's a yay or a nay. If your discussion
Yes,
can
ma'am. Thank
probably
you.
wait until your
So
legislation.
I would say that there was still some confusion as to exactly what was transpiring because the suggestions we had brought forward were not the same changes that were made to this. And there were additional changes made to it than what we had mentioned in the committee. So as a person on the committee, as one of the members of the committee, I'm not comfortable without having some more time to discuss exactly what was changed and how it's different from what happened before. I'm also, yes, thank you. So I would say we need to have more time in committee to discuss this further. So I would say vote no on this.
All right, and I'm going to remind all of council that this has been in committee for almost 5 months. So to go back to committee and stall this on a continuing basis is very non-productive. Would we call the
Madam
roll,
Chair, I'd like
please?
to make
No,
another comment,
would you
please.
call the roll, please?
Madam Chair,
This
I'd like
is
to
a
make another
motion
comment,
to
please.
No.
take it out of committee. Adams.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Safrati.
Yes.
Brownlee.
No.
Turjansky.
Yes.
Agee.
Yes.
Thank you. Please.
Okay, ordinance number 2014-36, an ordinance repealing chapter 1487 of the codified ordinances regarding certificates of rental compliance and amending chapter 1486 regarding the registration of rental properties in the city of Maple Heights and declaring an emergency.
This ordinance is on its 3rd reading, and there has been previous discussion regarding this legislation at 2 previous meetings, because also committee meetings. So may I have a motion for adoption,
So
please?
moved.
A second?
Second.
Richard? Call the roll,
Madam
please.
Chair? Can I ask for discussion, please?
I'm calling the roll. There is no
Chair.
discussion on the 3rd reading. Call the
Where
roll,
do you make
please.
these rules up from? I appeal the decision of the
Brownlee.
chair then to forego discussion. I'd ask for a second on that motion.
I'm asking for a vote for Brownlee.
Madam Chair, will you acknowledge the motion that I have made to appeal your decision?
I hear no second to your motion when we are in the middle of calling the roll, please.
Madam Chair, you overlooked discussion. You went straight to
There
calling
is
the roll.
no discussion.
You never asked.
This ordinance is on its third reading. There is no discussion.
Madam
We
Chair,
have already discussed
Last
this.
night you mentioned that there's no discussion on first reading either. So when is there discussion, Madam Chair?
First reading, and there were 3 people absent, so we would discuss, and then we would have to discuss again
That wasn't
tonight.
your reasoning then, Madam Chair.
Well, you didn't ask for my reasoning. I just said no, because we had discussion.
So there will be no discussion on third reading. That's a new rule here in Maple Heights? Will you entertain discussion,
No,
Madam Chair?
not at this point.
I appeal the decision of the chair then to forego discussion. And would ask that someone would second that motion so we can have discussion on this motion.
Was there a second or not?
No, there has been no second, and Kathy is in the middle of calling the roll and has been interrupted twice now. I'd like to call the roll, please.
This is-
Please
Mr. Law
call
Director,
the
would you be able
roll.
to explain how an appeal works
This
in
is-
this situation, please?
The second, no second.
There was no
How does
second.
an appeal work, though, in general? We're not asking whether there was a second.
We'll move on. There's no second to an appeal to the chair. We'll move
I
on.
believe Councilwoman Agee is asking for an explanation of how the appeal works and what is transpiring.
If there's a second, then the question comes to the board for the board to determine whether or not the chair is correct or incorrect, whether to permit discussion or whether not to
Okay,
permit
second,
discussion.
because I want to hear what John has to say.
Well, if you're seconding it, then you hear what he has to say. Or
Yes, that's
anyone. Well, yeah.
The chair defends their position, and everybody rules as to whether they're in favor of the chair's ruling or not.
Did you understand what you were seconding?
So
You were
take a vote
seconding
on
his-
I
it.
understand what I did, but John, I mean, you keep going around in circles. What are we doing?
Right now, you're
We're trying to
taking a
pass-
vote on the motion of whether or not to have, to appeal the chair's decision not to have discussion. Take the roll, Kevin.
We did that already.
On the appeal of the
So
chair.
this,
it's
you want me
second.
to call the roll to see if we are going to,
In this appeal.
No, it would, as I introduce a motion to appeal, as a motion, it needs a second. If it's seconded, then I present what I am appealing,
Right?
and she presents, the chair presents their position as to why they made that
And then
decision.
you would vote.
And then
and
it
then
would
you
be
vote
voted
on
on.
it?
Correct. What I just said.
So it was
Discussion or not.
second, so I believe it's time for me to make my comments, is that?
He makes a comment and the chair makes a comment, and there's a vote.
I believe simply that if there are any comments to be made by anyone at any point in time, whether it's first, second, or third reading, that we all should be afforded that mutual right. And so therefore, I appeal the decision of the chair to forego discussion and to take away my right to make comments on this legislation. That's why I appeal it.
And, okay, let me go back, Mr. Brownlee. You have already made several comments on your disagreement with things that were done or discussions that were made at both the meetings and from our building person who has had some input here. Thirdly, there has been 5 months of meetings or not meetings. You also had a meeting last week to discuss this. We have had third readings for several weeks now that have had previous discussions. And at this point, it's time to move and vote. And it is your right to vote against the ordinance or not. But we have been doing this process. When we get to the third reading, everyone should be comfortable enough and ready to vote. But you continue to want more discussion. I think if other people are ready to vote, they should also be given an opportunity to do that. Now,
So now we will vote on whether or not to appeal the decision of the chair.
That's correct. A yes vote would mean it would go to discussion. A no vote would mean you would go to a roll call.
Actually, that's incorrect. The question would be stated, does the decision of the chair stand? It's simple as that.
Mr.
Well,
Brownlee,
Does the decision of the chair
That's saying
stand?
it the same
Yes.
way.
No, it's actually not the same, but.
we'll accept the lawyer's opinion.
Yes agrees with the chair. Harvey. Now you've got me confused.
I'm sorry that you didn't understand it at first.
No, the question that you raise is to question the ruling of the chair. So if they want to question the ruling of the chair, I apologize. I will hold your question of the chair. They would vote in favor to question the ruling of the chair. You have your book handy?
Yeah, I'm looking
Should be if
for
you're,
it right
if
now.
you agree with Bill, vote yes.
Whatever I say is going to go.
Yeah, appeal the
Yes or
decision.
no.
Here, 123, we'll just look it up here.
If you've got it. Yes, no,
Appealing
maybe.
challenges the decision, guidelines. The chair says, shall the decision of the chair stand as the judgment of the assembly?
And then, so yes is in favor of the chair,
No is against.
no is not in favor of the chair.
Right.
So the question presented is shall the decision of the chair stand? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can we possibly call the vote for that first?
Okay, shall the decision of the chair stand? Yes in favor of the chair, no in favor of Mr. Brownlee. Adams.
No, if he has discussion, I believe yes, I should let him talk.
Jones.
Yes.
Sephardi.
No.
Brownlee.
No.
Georgiansky.
Yes.
Agee, no.
No.
Cornels.
So, Mr. Brownlee, go ahead and discuss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the discussion is very important for our cities, and I'm glad that I had a chance to make comments now. We have also before us, even this evening, another ordinance that has come through kind of similar debate, and that is, Resolution 2014-61, changing the foreclosed properties, the amount of money that we will be charging to register your foreclosed property. That was changed in the winter to $500. At that point in time, I brought up questions
Mr.
saying...
Brownlee, you are supposed to be discussing 2014-36. Would
Thank
you
you, ma'am.
please stay to the point?
And so we cut
To the
discussion
point.
short on that one and did not refer to committee because it didn't need any further discussion. Well, here we are now again, changing it only a few months later. I don't believe this is fair. This kind of operation is fair to our residents, to the businesses, those who are operating within our city, to have the rules changed so often. So therefore, I would say, if there are still questions as to what is being done here, considering there was only 3 members of council at the committee meeting even, that if there are any further questions, if there isn't 100% surety that this is what we want, then we should not move forward on this ordinance. Because if we do like we did back in the winter and we miss something, then we'll be back changing again and just leaving everyone hopping to try and figure out what's going on in the city, what the rules actually are. So therefore, I would say we need to give this more time and we should not pass this as it stands because we are not sure that this is what we want. And I don't think it's been given due consideration.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Go ahead.
Mr. Brownlee, is your questions coming from landlords or from a different point? Because we have met in committee on the 24th of June. We tried to get Michael Conti, building commissioner, at the next committee meeting, which he was not able to make, so we canceled the meeting. He did come on his day off this past Friday, and we were there for at least an hour and a half, if not longer, discussing the ordinance Kathy did some revisions, we asked her questions. We had a landlord present who also agreed and didn't have a problem with the ordinance. And basically what we're trying to do here is streamline the process to not bottleneck and cause an inconvenience to our illustrious landlords and whoever else might be coming to the building department window, trying to get their permits. And this way they could do most of it by mail. And there should be no problem with what we have discussed so far. If you have questions, you had ample time to talk to Rick and to call another meeting if there were more. So I don't understand why we have to delay this process. Because we're already causing a huge delay just with the rental registrations that are happening right now in the city.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Anyone else?
Jackie,
Yes, go ahead.
Chair. I also heard the building commissioner speak and help put this legislation together and the need for it. And reading it a few times, going over it a few times. Bill, I think we have enough knowledge and we should know that the city needs it and we should support our building commissioner.
Thank you, Alex. Okay,
Madam Chair. The very same building commissioner in committee said that if we wanted to wait on it, we could wait on it. There was no dire need to change this from his mouth whenever he was speaking on it. So I don't believe that appealing to his judgment is the one that says speed it up. I would remind everyone that what we have before us, is not what we had discussed in committee. The changes that were made are not what was done here. There are other changes. Some of the changes we discussed were not implemented, and the changes that were made that we had discussed didn't happen the way that we expected them to happen. So this document has only been before us for one day, really. So, therefore, to say that we've had plenty of time to consider it, I don't know that 36 hours, 24 hours is exactly a long time to consider something after it was changed.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. A.J.
Councilwoman Jones, is that correct what he's saying?
I think we all saw Rick come to our coffee.
No, I asked you, is that correct what Mr. Brown is saying?
I have no knowledge of anything that's in here that we asked for that's not. Everything that, as far as I'm concerned, has been explained. There was, initially we thought there were only 2 fees. It came to our knowledge that there is a 3rd fee, which is $100 for the rental registration. The fee structure I don't think has changed. I think what's been changed is some of the terminology. And I think there's been some cleanup in there, and now it's a lean, smooth process. The only thing that, Bill, I think that you recommended was to have a flow chart or some type of chart in the ordinance, and I thought we made it clear with Rick, who has not even prepared the new application for rental registration, that that would be included in there to make it understandable for people that are coming in instead of the packet that you picked up, Alex, for us, because that was the old packet. And to clarify things so it's very easy for people to understand. There's going to be a tenant division, there's going to be a landlord division, and then there's just the actual application. The landlord pays for everything up front. He gets the $50 from the tenant for the tenant lease or the tenant license. And it's to streamline everything. I think this is better than it was before. I don't see how us rehashing or how we think that we're better than the commissioner, especially when he came to us at caucus asking us to please take this out of committee.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I just want to note that Rick came to talk to me about the changes in there, and there was the fees. That's why I made the flow chart or whatever you want to call that, because the fees were very confusing as far as the $100 inspection fee. And even the old ordinance mentioned an inspection, but the fee is not usually put into the ordinance. It's always in the fee ordinance, and we refer to that section. So that if you change all the fees, or if you change one fee, then you have to go into all the ordinances and change it. So we don't like to mention the actual fee for inspection in an ordinance. We always refer it back. So yeah, there is a little bit of different wording that maybe in the committee they didn't know about the $100 fee, or the fact that we don't actually put $100 in the ordinance for the inspection, because inspections are different for a single residential than a strip mall. So we refer it back to the fee ordinance.
And actually, excuse me, Madam Chair, what we really need to have is clarification for when people do come up to the window, or be able to print this online, for them to fill out the application, come in, make their appointment, and they could, everything else is streamlined through the mail. So if the application shows clarity, and he did
We're going to have
tell
a
us that
packet.
we have input into
We are going
that.
to have packets,
Right,
and they can get them online or in person.
and we can't do that until the ordinance passes.
Correct.
So right now, everything's at a
Okay.
standstill.
All right, have we had enough, or have we had sufficient discussion to make a good decision here?
Madam Chair.
Once again, Mr. Brownlee, can you limit your comments so that we can move on, please?
Thanks for letting me know.
You're welcome.
My main point here is that what we have in hand is not what the committee discussed. The fees that are in here is not what the committee discussed. I mentioned that there was 3 fees in committee, and the building commissioner said, no, there's only 2 fees. So we went with 2 fees at a total of $125. Well, it turns out there actually are 3 fees, and they total way more than $125. So this ordinance, and there's other things that are different in here, but my main point is that this is not what the committee discussed. This is not what we talked about. This is something different. This is all the fees put into one fee now as well. There are many differences, variances from what we discussed in committee. So this is not the same ordinance.
Madam
We
Chair.
should reconsider this.
Okay.
The fees are the same as what they're paying now as they will be. That's important, because in the old ordinance, it said $75 I think it's 1486, and in 1487, which was the tenant portion, it said $50. But it never said anything about the inspection, so when they come up to the window, oh, I have to pay an inspection fee? So we combined it all so they know upfront what they have to pay.
Yeah, that's my point, is we didn't know these things, and now they're just now being explained to us as though we already knew them before we were ready to vote 15 minutes ago. So
No,
we
I
don't...
disagree.
so-
We both were able to talk to Rick on Monday, and we had every question that we had explained. Do you want to call me out of order, Bill? I'm sorry.
Madam Chair. And so my concern is that we should have more discussion. This discussion we're having right now, we should be having, but we should be having it in committee where we have the building commissioner with us, where we have everyone who needs to speak on it with us, so we can make a good judgment as to whether this is what we want, so we don't come back in a couple months and
So,
change
can
it.
I say something? And I-
Like it even
Yeah,
though-
one moment. I'm going to say this. I think that this may or may not be of interest to the folks that don't stand at the window. They don't deal with all of the customers, residents, landlords, people that come in. And I think that the building official should have some input and should have some authority when it comes to preparing the ideal rental registration. It went to committee because it was important for us to look at this and to make sure that it was going to be fair, just, and still bring in what we needed. So for us to sit here and talk about going back and having council sit at a committee meeting and do it over and over and over again because it just doesn't agree with what you might have said. I think the building official should have some authority at that point. And it looks like all of the comments that were made are pretty much in here. So at this point,
Madam Chair, just a
go
quick
ahead.
question and comment. Councilwoman Jones, and maybe you can answer the first one. Who's on the committee?
Edwino, Bill, Ron. Alex was at one of the meetings, and so was Richard. So there were 4 of us.
Okay.
First meeting. Actually, 5 of us at the first
Well,
meeting.
my next question is did the committee vote to bring this out?
We're doing it
We
here.
there.
But in your discussion, was it discussed to bring it out, and was there a majority to bring it out? And I'm asking the opinion of the committee members. Do they feel confident enough to bring it out?
Bring it out of committee.
Yes.
Richard was part of the committee then.
Richard also.
Madam Chair, I wasn't there Friday, so I didn't hear what.
Right, I understand that.
Okay.
Richard?
I'm asking this too because I wasn't there either.
Okay.
I wasn't able to make the 5:30, 6 o'clock meeting.
Madam Chair, leave it on the chairperson of the committee. Toby, you was there. We knew that you was going to that committee meeting to bring this out for us to vote on. There's agreement between the committee that to bring it forward. Your committee.
I think, Madam Chair, I think that after we met with Rick, I don't think we had any more questions, but we did have some clarifications that was needed. Those clarifications went to you through an email and through Rick. You changed the ordinance. When we looked at it, yeah, you're right. There are 3 fees. We didn't know where the 3rd fee was. We both had the opportunity Monday at Planning and Zoning, because Rick was there, to clarify, and I think we both talked to him pretty lengthily, for us to understand what was actually in here, because we're not building officials. So the ordinance, yes, is a little complex, but when the ordinance is going to be interpreted into the application for the landlord and the tenant, it is going to be very simplistic in order for them to understand who does what. Nothing really has been changed, except there's been some terminology, and the fee structure is basically the same, it's just called different things. And basically, it just streamlines everything. People could actually download this online. They don't have to have somebody come to the window 2 or 3 times. And that was the whole purpose of the changes through Rick.
Right.